The story begins with a man who wanted to achieve great things in life, but fate always disappointed him. His name was Dan Forster. Dan was a biology teacher in a high school. He lived a comfortable life with his wife and their young daughter, Maury. Dan was a very sharp-minded person. Therefore, he applied for a job at a major government research institute. But after a long wait, he received only a rejection letter. Dan was heartbroken to hear this news, but he did not tell anyone at home. That night, Dan was sitting at home with his friends, watching the FIFA World Cup match. Everyone was enjoying the match. Then suddenly, the sky in the middle of the field turned black and a mysterious light started coming from below. The next moment, a dazzling time portal opened, and a team of armed soldiers emerged from it. Dan and his friends were completely stunned by this sight. Then, a commander came out of the same portal and asked everyone to remain quiet. He told that she had come from 30 years later, from 2051. At that moment, the entire world has been attacked by a dangerous alien race. Because of their attack, humanity is almost on the verge of extinction and now desperately needs the help of the humans of the past. As soon as this news came out, the whole world was shaken. After investigation, it was proved that every single thing said by the commander was absolutely true. Immediately, recruitment of soldiers from all over the world started. Those who had died in 2051 were selected because those whose lives were in the future would have suffered severe physical damage during time travel. Therefore, only those who were not alive after 30 years were selected. A lottery draw was conducted and thousands of names came up. One of those names was also Dan's name. As soon as he got the news, he went straight to the military checkup center. As soon as he entered, he was asked to remove his shirt. After this, his hand was put into a strange machine. As soon as the machine was turned on, the screen showed that Dan would die exactly after 7 years. Upon learning this, he was terrified and immediately asked how he was going to die, but they refused to tell him anything. Then suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his hand because the machine was fitting 3 special chips into his hand. As he pulled his hand out, he saw a strange device on his wrist. This device was supposed to take him to the future and bring him back 7 days later. After this, Dan finally visits his wife Amy and daughter Maury. Amy's eyes filled with tears as she saw the device in Dan's hand. She knew that surviving those dangerous aliens was almost impossible. She didn't want Dan to leave her and Maury alone and go on such a dangerous mission. But now Dan had no choice. He promises to return and head straight to the training camp. The atmosphere there is extremely intimidating. Most of the men are so daring that they don't even have the courage to grab a gun. There, he meets Charlie, a funny but nervous man, and Dorian, who is incredibly cold-blooded. Then suddenly an emergency order came that all the soldiers would have to be sent into the future before completing their training. Actually, aliens had attacked the research lab, and the demonists present there were the last hope of saving the humans. Therefore, all the new soldiers would have to be sent straight on the mission without proper preparation. All the soldiers stood in front of the time machine. As soon as the machine was switched on, a colorful portal opened in front of them, and in the next moment, everyone was pulled inside one by one through the cheeks. But suddenly, there was a misunderstanding in the transport, and the portal opened thousands of feet above instead of on the ground. The very next moment, all the soldiers started falling from the sky without parachutes. Many people lost their lives as soon as they fell, but Dan was lucky. He fell straight into the swimming pool of a tall building. Other people from above also came and kept falling on him, but still he survived. As soon as he came out of the water, Dan immediately started counting the survivors around him. But there were less than 100 people alive, while the people who were sent were in thousands. In such a situation, the question was how would so few people fight those voracious aliens? Just then a new order came from the headquarters on his communication device. He had to immediately reach a research lab and bring back the remaining medicines there. Dan was made the leader of this mission and was clearly warned that after just 10 minutes the Air Force would bomb the entire area. On hearing this, Dan immediately left for the lab with his team. On the way, he saw only dead bodies of humans everywhere. Seeing the sharp thorns of aliens stuck in the walls and the corpses sticking out from the roof, it became clear that aliens were present nearby. Just then, something strange was seen moving on the roof. Dan turned on the torch, and the next moment, everyone was stunned to see the same dangerous aliens hiding right above them. Without wasting a moment, everyone attacked them. The continuous firing made them even more furious, and they started moving towards the team at full speed. These aliens were about 3 meters long. The armor on their backs was so strong that ordinary bullets could not even touch them. From above, they could levitate along the ground as well as in the air and could fire sharp poisonous thorns from their back tentacles. Their only weakness was their neck, but attacking there was almost impossible. Somehow they got the medicines. But as soon as they came out, they found out that the entrance had already been taken over by aliens. Without any hesitation, Dan moved straight up with the entire team. Aliens were chasing them at every step. Firing continued. One alien blocked all the bullets with his strong armor, and as soon as he got the chance, he attacked a soldier. The impact was so strong that even Dan fell down. But as soon as he regained his composure, he picked up his gun and started firing indiscriminately. The alien retreated before the rain of bullets. Taking advantage of this, Dan continued moving forward with the entire team. At that very moment, fighter jets had already arrived from above to carry out bombing. Dan immediately ran towards a building. The aliens were watching from behind and following them. Then one of the aliens threw his barb straight at Dan. Without wasting any time, Dan took a swing at the armpit and the barb was torn to pieces. The next moment, Dan fired a shot, hitting the alien squarely in the neck, and it fell down on the spot. At that very moment, fighter jets started bombing, and Dan's team somehow managed to get out of there. Later, when Dan regained consciousness, he was in the medical camp at headquarters. Charlie and Dorian had also somehow survived. Then two soldiers came and told him that the commander was calling him. As soon as Dan reached there, the commander thanked him for risking his life to save the doctors. Meanwhile, a soldier called the commander by his first name. Dan was shocked for a moment after hearing the name. Then the commander told him his full name. In fact, the 5-year-old daughter whom he had left behind in the army had now become the commander of the American Army after 30 years. Hearing this truth, the ground beneath Dan's feet sank. This was Mori, his own daughter. Seeing her father after so many years, Commander Mori composed herself and got straight to the point. She explained that the aliens they had been fighting so far were male Whitespikes, but the real threat was a female Whitespike hidden in her nest underground. An antidote could be made from that female's blood that would wipe out the entire alien race. Therefore, the next mission was to capture the female alien alive. Without hesitation, Mori boarded the helicopter with her team and set out on the mission. Dan was also with her. Soon the helicopter reached the cave where the female Whitespike was hiding below. Some soldiers had already restrained it with a tranquilizer. Mori grabbed the rope and climbed straight down. As soon as she reached the cave, she was astonished because the female Whitespike was much bigger and more dangerous than the male. Mori immediately ordered the soldiers to tie its tentacles. But the next moment, the female grabbed a soldier and dragged him towards the second nest. Seeing this, Mori immediately ordered fire to be poured on the second nest. The intense flames engulfed the entire nest, causing the female Whitespike to panic and return to the first nest. As soon as she entered the nest, she attacked the soldiers. But Mori had already subdued her with a tranquilizer. It seemed that catching her would be easy now. But then the female Whitespike started screaming loudly towards the sky, as if she was calling her flock. In the jungle above, a flock of birds started flying rapidly, indicating danger. Just then a terrifying sound echoed from within the jungle, and before Dan's eyes, thousands of aliens came out of the jungle and attacked the humans. Without hesitation, Dan picked up the machine gun and started firing. His precise aim killed the aliens one after the other. Upon reaching the bottom, he saw Mori trapped in the clutches of the female Whitespike. Without wasting a moment, he grabbed the female's tentacles and pulled her back with all his strength, allowing Mori to break free. Then, all the soldiers together somehow locked the female Whitespike in a large iron cage and pulled her up into a safe helicopter. But many aliens were blown to pieces as soon as they collided with the helicopter's wings. Thousands more aliens were coming out of the jungle from behind. Mori and Dan, fighting them together, somehow managed to escape from there. A crowd of aliens kept chasing them. Dan was covering Mori while driving the car, and Mori, standing on the roof of the car, was continuously firing at the aliens coming from behind. Finally, both of them caught the female Whitespike and took her to the base. As soon as they reached the lab, Mori immediately started working on making an antidote from the blood of that female alien. Dan also begins to help her with his knowledge of biology. They work together all night, and finally, the moment they've been waiting for arrives. Mori has found the antidote. This antidote is capable of eliminating the entire Whitespike species. But there was a problem. The antidote only works at very low temperatures, so it's never been effective in the future. Mori told Dan that he would have to take this sample back to his time. He would have to go there and destroy those aliens as quickly as possible, because it would be too late in 2051. But there is still time in 2022. Meanwhile, the female Whitespike, locked in a cage, started screaming loudly, and as soon as her voice was heard, a danger alarm sounded throughout the base. Outside, thousands of Whitespikes attacked the security security wall. The next moment, some aliens entered the lab and broke the cage, freeing the female Whitespike. As soon as the female came out, she started looking for Dan and Maury because she knew that they had the antidote. Aliens were attacking from all sides. Maury told Dan that he had to go back to his timeline right now and handed him a sample of the antidote. Dan kept refusing to go, but Maury said that only he could take this medicine there. This was the only way. Then the female Whitespike appeared and attacked Maury, piercing his stomach with her tentacle. Dan, enraged, started firing at him, but the cunning Danev stepped back. Then the bridge beneath them broke and Maury began to fall. Dan immediately caught her hand, but at that very moment, the female Whitespike grabbed Maury's leg. Dan held Maury with one hand, but Maury knew that if she stayed there, Dan would not be able to return and the world would be destroyed. So she freed her hand and fell down with the alien. Dan's heart stopped for a moment, but she held the sample of the antidote in her hand. His device activated, and he returned to 2022. Returning to 2022, Dan plunged headlong into researching the antidote. He analyzed the sample. Charlie was also with him. That's when Dan realized something important. The antidote contained a freezing compound. This medicine only worked in extreme cold. This meant that these aliens had previously lived somewhere very cold. Then Dan searched old satellite imagery and found a place, a beautiful island in Russia. There, something was buried beneath a glacier, something very large. Now Dan needed someone to help him. He went to his father, James. Dan and James had a very complicated relationship. James had abandoned Dan as a child. Dan had never forgiven him, but James was a very capable survivalist. Living in the jungle, tracking, and handling heavy weapons were all things James knew. When Dan reached him, there was silence between them at first. Then James himself said, "Tell me whatever you want." Dan told him everything. James thought for a moment and said, "Okay, let's go." In that moment, the distance of years between them reduced a little. Dan, Charlie, Dorian, and James Miller set out for Russia. They reached Siberia on a private plane. As soon as they arrived, they were greeted by a terrible cold. On a deserted island, there was an old Russian military facility that had been closed for years. They entered. Everything was old and rusted. Then they found a big door. As soon as they went inside, everyone's breath stopped. There was a huge alien ship. It had come here thousands of years ago and was buried in the glacier. As the ice melted due to global warming, the aliens frozen within it were awakening. This was the real power. Dan's plan was to enter the ship and inject the antidote into all the sleeping female Whitespikes. If all the females were killed, the entire species would be wiped out, and the catastrophe of 2051 would never happen again. Everyone entered. The ship was pitch dark. Frozen Whitespikes were lying everywhere. All four were slowly injecting each one. The antidote was working. Everything was going well. Then a team member's voice was accidentally heard. A Whitespike's eyes opened. His voice echoed like a signal, and all the surrounding aliens woke up. The entire team started running inside the ship. The aliens started chasing them. Threatening sounds were coming from everywhere. It was difficult to find the way in the darkness. Then Dorian stopped at a crossroads. He looked into Dan's eyes. Dan said no, but Dorian smiled and said, "Run." The next moment, he turned back and single-handedly killed the entire group of aliens in an explosion. Dan, Charlie, and James somehow managed to get out of the ship, but behind them, a huge female Whitespike emerged from the ship. It was the largest of all, perhaps their queen. It was more powerful and faster than all the others. It immediately began chasing the three. Charlie tries to stop it, but is badly injured. James also fights it, but it pushes him back too. Now only Dan was left. Dan ran towards a high cliff. Female was right behind him. Dan had the last dose of antidote in his hand. Both reached the very edge of the cliff. Female attacked. Dan tumbled to one side, but regained his composure and, with all his strength, injected the antidote straight into her. The female's body began to react. Her strength began to wane. She stumbled and looked at Dan one last time. Then she fell off the cliff. A loud bang came from below. Everything was over. Dan sat there, exhausted and stunned. The ice in the sky above had changed. All the alien species inside the ship would never awaken. That attack of 2048 would never happen again. The future had changed. Dan got up and started towards his house. As soon as they reached home, Amy took him in her arms. Little Maury came running and Dan picked her up. Dan looked at the girl's face carefully. He remembered that commander who, 30 years later, had the same big figure as this girl. The one who fought alone for so many years. The one who did everything for her father. That Maury will never live that life again. Now her life will be better. Dan held her tighter. The film ends there. Thank you.